Are you introducing us? Can I trust you to do that?
You can if you just give me a minute. I don't know why this is so freaking challenging for me. Okay. I mean, because the funny thing is like, if I screwed it up, we could just do it again.
Yeah.
I put all this pressure on myself. I like to do it the first time, just like we tell our clients to not worry about. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. Here we go. Hello, and welcome to Middleish, the podcast about moderation in all things. I am Michael Gray.
And I'm Erin Green.
How you doing, Erin?
I'm doing well.
Good.
I'm great.
Good.
Yeah.
I said that very sing-songy, didn't I? How you doing, Erin? Hey, girlfriend.
What's up? Yeah, I'm doing well. I've had a nice morning. Went for a trail run with a friend, and
Nice.
it's not, well, it is going to be hot here today, but it's not like blistering hot. Last week we got into I shouldn't say that in front of you because you have the crazy humidity and it gets super hot.
But yeah, I saw your guys' temps. Whoa.
Yeah, it got into like 106 range or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just get like, you don't want to go outside. You don't want to really do much. So yeah, today's a little bit better. It's been, Matt and I actually sat on the patio last night. I think it got up to like the low 90s, and it was, it's late enough in the season that we're getting shade a little bit earlier on our front patio. And we're just like, this is awesome. More of this, please.
Nice. Yeah. Didn't you guys have like plus like 100 and up for like 5 or 6 days in a row?
I think it ended up being maybe 3 days in a row. So it wasn't, but I mean, it was, who knows if it feels any different at 98 degrees versus 103. I mean, maybe it feels a little different, but it was supposed to get up to like 109 in a couple areas, which for Boise is very hot.
That's really hot.
But I don't think it actually did. We skipped town, actually. We left on Friday and went camping, and everybody was headed toward the mountains, right? I mean, that was like the theme of the weekend. And Matt and I were like, we just don't want to go where there's going to be 100 people and you're competing for campsites. And, you drive for 3 hours and then you can't find anywhere to camp. So we stayed where it would be hot, but there was a water source. So we went down by the Middle Fork of the Boise River. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, good.
Sat in the river.
That sounds all right. I wouldn't mind sitting in a river right now.
Yeah. Are there many rivers in Texas?
Yeah, there's nothing real close by, at least that I know of here. We got like bays and ocean, but I'm sure there are rivers closer than I think. But yeah, there are several. You can go floating. Some, I think, a few hours away, which we need to do. And then like San Antonio has a big river that goes through it. They have their river walk. I don't know what it's called, but yeah, it's got rivers. Just I don't know where they are. They're out there. I'm sure they're out there somewhere.
Texas is a big state, so it's got to span
large.
Some. Yeah.
Yeah. But they're out there. There's probably like some just like a mile or two away, and people down here are going to be like, "You idiot!"
I know.
Yeah. But I don't know where they are. So sorry.
Yeah. This ties into what we'll talk about later with the meaning and the mundane at the end of the podcast. But I have just been amazed at what Idaho has to offer. I know that we have one of the largest river systems in the United States through our state. And we have some just amazing wilderness, but there are parts of it that I just haven't really explored that are literally like hour and a half, 2 hours drive from Boise. And I'm just like, now I've got the bug. I'm like, let's go check it out. This is some cool. Yeah. There's some cool places.
Yeah. Idaho's beautiful. Idaho doesn't get enough credit. I don't think as a state. It's a gorgeous state.
Don't tell everybody.
Hideous and dry. And everyone I know that lives there is,
What's funny is when people would drive through Boise on the freeway. I mean, I don't know a single city that looks really appealing from a freeway. I have yet to really find one. but when people would drive through Boise on the freeway, they'd be like, oh, Boise's ugly. It's just sagebrush and desert. Everything's brown. And I'm like, yeah, you just keep thinking that. You just keep
Yeah.
driving. Because it's
Yeah.
actually pretty amazing.
Because you take that little, like if you're coming from the east, from Ontario where I was, and you
Yeah.
take that little exit to downtown, oh man, it gets gorgeous so quick.
All
You
of a
kind of
sudden.
round that bend and get that hill, and then there's the foothills and downtown. You're like,
Yeah.
oh,
And it's the
it's
city of
gorgeous.
trees.
Yep.
It's called the city of trees for a reason.
Gorgeous.
So
Yeah.
yeah, if you get into some of the green areas and get off the freeway and again the rivers and exploring the hills, I mean it's pretty cool. So
Very.
but it also makes me realize when I see friends in other states that I would probably never consider really traveling to or exploring, but then I see these really cool areas in those places. I'm like, how many of these little gems are around the US that you just would never think to go visit or explore unless somebody kind of prompted that or shared with you, this is what, this is what it can look like. So
sure. Probably a lot. Yeah. Well, shall we do this thing?
Let's dive in.
Let's dive in.
Talk about
get your swimming trunks. We're diving in. Get your goggles, peeps.
Get that bikini body. If you listen to the episode on body kindness, get that bikini body. We're diving in. So I thought about our topic today, motivation versus momentum. I thought about this on a mountain bike ride I did a couple weeks ago where Matt and I rode with a friend and we just kind of headed out on this epic sort of, let's ride for 5 hours and do all these crazy trails and get up to Bogus. And mountain biking, especially around here, involves a lot of hills, a lot of climbing, a lot of descents, not really a lot of rolling kinds of features. But it made me think about the whole motivation versus momentum thing because on a bicycle, there's a lot of analogies that you could use there. So for me, it was like whenever I'm climbing a hill, and I actually enjoy the climb because I know there's a reward at the top. I like the hard work. I can get into a rhythm really easily. I don't have to think too much about it because there's not a lot of technical downhill stuff. But it takes motivation to start that climb and to even keep going on the climb sometimes. And when you're in the middle of a big climb, there isn't a lot of momentum sometimes. So it just takes motivation, and revisiting like why you're climbing this hill in the first place, why you keep going, how you keep going. You just put another pedal stroke in, you take another drink of water, whatever. But there's also that momentum that you can get if you do, like, especially with a mountain bike, there's a lot of steep descents and then back to a climb and then a descent and then back to a climb. And if you take the momentum from the descent and you use it to push you partway up the climb, that's something that I'm really starting to learn a little bit better because I come from a different biking background. So mountain biking just, it takes a different kind of approach. So I just had this really nice sort of conversation with myself about how biking can be this whole metaphor for what we experience when we're trying to find motivation or trying to talk our way through how do we motivate for change or to get up that hill, and then where does momentum take us and how does that play a role. And it's not always like you have one and then the other. They'll like cross over and you'll switch from one to the other constantly throughout this, this journey.
Right. Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I like that illustration. I think that at least for me, it seems like motivation kind of has, it gets viewed in two different ways. And in one way, it's sort of like, it's the only thing that gets you going, right? Like I've got to get your clients, like I've got to get motivated, or I saw this saying and I'm really motivated, so I want to work with you. And it's like nothing happens unless I get motivated. And then on the other end, and this one isn't as popular, but I see it a lot, is motivation kind of gets crapped on, right? Like it's a stupid, useless thing. Motivation's dumb. You don't need it, and my thinking
Just
is,
do it.
all
Just
right,
go.
is it somewhere in the middle? Yeah, I think motivation is often like it's relied on way too heavily, but I also think it has a lot of value. Um,
Mm-hmm.
just maybe not as much as a lot of people think it does. Like, it seems like a lot of people, it's motivation is that's it. I've got to get motivated and stay motivated or I'm screwed. You
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, and don't you think it's kind of a scapegoat sometimes? Like,
I
well,
think
I'm
it
not
can be.
motivated. I haven't found my motivation yet. I haven't
Mhm.
almost like it's this thing that's just going to plop down on your face and you can't ignore it.
Right.
Where one of my favorite phrases relating to motivation is that action begets motivation,
Hmm.
which to me sort of goes counterintuitive to how I used to look at motivation. I used to
Hmm.
be one of those people that's like, oh, it just strikes you, or you can kind of build it up in yourself.
Hmm.
But I've also learned, and this was a big learning experience through triathlon, is that action begets motivation, meaning
Hmm.
you take that first step or you take that first 5 steps,
Hmm.
whatever the next right step is.
Hmm.
And motivation tends to follow whatever action you're taking. So yeah, I think sometimes people just kind of wait for it and it ends up being a little bit of a scapegoat, so to
Yeah,
speak.
I think it certainly can. Yeah, I think it certainly can be. Yeah. Um, so real quick, I just want to kind of give like my definitions of how I see these,
Yeah.
maybe just for a baseline. So I see motivation as, I think it tends to be like a feeling, right? Like we talk to a friend who's like lost, 20 pounds, or we see a video that's like really inspiring and it's dramatic music, and so we get this build up of like, yes, I can do this and I can make a change and I'm strong. And, it's just like we feel like we have this real big feeling that we experience. And because of that big feeling, we're like, now I'm ready to make a change. That's kind of how I see motivation. Versus momentum, I see it more like it's force gained, like speed gained, a drive that you kind of get behind you that comes from repetitive action, right? Like
Mhm.
over and over and over. So for me, I guess as we go through, and you can say if you see them differently, but for me, as we go through today, that's kind of the framework I'm working off of how I see those two things and how I see them different.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not versed on the reading in the psychology literature on the exact definitions of these
Hmm.
either. But I agree with you. One of the things I just heard, I was listening to a podcast with Rebecca Rush, Kate Courtney, Amber Neben. These are women who have accomplished like amazing things in the cycling world,
Hmm.
and in the world in general, just by being ambassadors. And they were talking about some of the ways that they were talking about developing their why when it comes to athletic events or endeavors, and how they cultivate that why and how they keep that why in the forefront of their minds. And we've talked about this before.
Hmm.
And something Kate Courtney said, her sports psychologist reminds her of, is motivation is an emotion, not a muscle.
Hmm.
And I really like that
I like that
because,
too.
and from what I've read, motivation may not be an emotion, so to speak, but it is driven by emotion, and
Hmm.
it's a part, emotions are part of motivation. And exactly what you're saying, it's like this emotion driven sort of response that we have, um, which again kind of speaks to me, thinking that it's not something you just, I mean, you have to just kind of wait for and put that out into the world and wait for motivation to come. There's actually things that you can do that
Hmm.
will evoke feelings and emotions and start kind of driving that for you, if you
Hmm.
will. And then the momentum piece, um, I think you're right that it really comes from this. When you look at it defined, actually, they talk about how momentum is a reduced resistance to the behavior change. So the more momentum you have,
Hmm.
the easier that that is to follow through again and again and repeat it. And as momentum builds, you have less resistance,
Right.
which I think speaks to your definition of like you do it again and again and again, and you build up that experience for yourself. And all of a sudden you have this momentum. You can tell yourself, yeah, I can do this again because I've done it 10 times before.
Right.
Whereas, and then the motivation kind of follows, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you're like, yeah, I feel highly motivated to keep going because I have
Mm-hmm.
this whole bank of experience and this momentum behind me. Why would I want to stop when I've
Right.
already, been rolling?
Right.
But then we can also talk about what happens when momentum starts to want or gets interfered
Yeah.
with, because that happens too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think you're right. I like that. That's a good point. And I think, for me, I think I really believe that motivation has a really strong benefit, I think, to making change. I think we can use it in sort of that typical sense of like, I feel this feeling, I have this emotion, I'm feeling like, yes, I'm ready to go. And I think we can capitalize on that. But I feel like the issue comes when, what about when that feeling or emotion goes away, right? Like I like to use the illustration of like, okay, I've got my, I signed back up with my gym and it's Sunday night and I've got my gym bag packed and, after work, I'm going to the gym and here's what I'm doing. I'm just ready to go. And then you're on way to the gym and you get a flat tire. Right. And like when momentum is, or motivation is still like this little baby, that is 100% external, and
Mm-hmm.
something like that happens, it can be gone like that. And
Mm-hmm.
so then Sunday night, you're all motivated. Monday evening, it's gone because of one action, because of one event, right? Like this is how fickle it can be sometimes, especially when it's 100% external. And I think
Mm-hmm.
what you're saying, which I really like, and I haven't thought about it in this way before, is like when we can internally manufacture our own motivation. And I really like that concept. I haven't thought about it in that way. See, this is how like unscripted we are. It's like, all right, here's the topic. We got a
This
couple
is,
points.
yeah.
Let's go. But
This
I
is
like
not
that.
planned.
No, I like that a lot. Just the idea of, and I guess I probably would have lumped that internal motivation in more with momentum before this
Mm.
conversation. But I think there's a difference that I didn't see before, that I think they deserve to be separated a little bit. So yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
That's a good new thought.
Yeah. And I tie that a lot back into my training as a
Mm-hmm.
professional triathlete, because going back to this podcast, they were talking about, what do you do when you're faced with that workout that is like your
Mm-hmm.
nemesis workout? Or I was telling Matt last night, because he was kind of asking me, we didn't talk too many details about my training. I would share things with him, but he never really asked me questions. And last night he was like, did you have those workouts that were like the total, like the get up in your head and you're like, you have to talk your way through them. And I was like, oh yeah, I had plenty of those. And I had like very specific sessions where I could see it on the calendar and I would be like, oh,
Oh
here it
no.
comes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, deep breaths. Um, and I would have sessions that I knew I could nail. I could do it if I wasn't so tired, or if my head's in the right place, or if my body decides to respond. So just to your point with the talk about the intrinsic motivation and how that plays in, I would rely heavily on taking that first actionable step, doing the first interval and just getting it done. Heading out the door and just doing my warm up. Getting to the pool and just getting through the first 500, things like that, that I know I can do this piece of it. That's going to be my motivation
Right.
to then approach the workout.
Right.
And I know that people will probably listen to this and be like, well, I'm not a professional athlete. Like that doesn't relate to me. Of course it relates to you,
Absolutely.
because we all run into that when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to like anything, whether it's like getting up to make dinner, rather
Mm-hmm.
than versus eating a bowl of cereal, which, hey,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes happens, no judgment.
You better
But
not be judging. I'm going to take strong offense, Aaron.
Did you have honey grams last night?
I didn't, but a couple nights ago I had some Cocoa Pebbles, and I'm not ashamed.
So, yes,
Yeah.
it relates to just about anything that signifies a shift in your
Mhm.
actions or your behaviors. And that's what that whole action begets motivation. It's taking that first step. And I'll encourage clients, like, say they have a goal of walking or running or doing some kind of activity, and they're too tired, say after work or something, just for example. This one happens a lot because a lot of people will target that after work time to go do like a walk or go for a jog or something, and they're just feeling too tired. They don't have the motivation. That's what I hear a lot. And I'll say, well, what if we put this into almost like an actionable plan? So you have your stuff sitting by your door, maybe your shoes and like your change of clothes is like wherever in the bathroom. So you're just going to see it as soon as you get home. You go through these actionable steps, things that you actually have to do in order to get out the door. You get out the door, you go to the end of the block, or you go, the first mile. That sounds doable enough.
Mhm.
You do those things and then see how you feel.
Right.
And feeling is the motivation, right? It
Right.
ties back into it, that emotional
Mhm.
response. So a lot of times, if you just get that first step or two or five going, all of
Mhm.
a sudden you can start being like, okay, I can do a little bit more. I can go to the end of the next block. Or,
Mhm.
this actually feels really good. I'm starting to perk up. I'm just going to do the whole run that I planned.
Mhm.
So those things actually, I mean, it does relate directly back to my
Sure.
experience as a triathlete, and some of those ways that I approached some of those heavy workouts and the training session.
Yeah. So I see them. I kind of see. I guess we have like external, internal motivation,
Mm-hmm.
and then I see internal motivation and momentum as really kind of like weaving in and out with each other a little bit, because I feel like what you're saying with the, okay, let me get my shoes on. Let me get out the door. Let me walk down the block. Like, to me, that's building momentum. Like, that's not the feeling. I'm not feeling it. I don't really want to be doing this, but I'm gaining steam, right? Like, I'm taking some actions that begin to like support this thing that I say I want to do. And then once we get out there, it's like, all right, I'm actually feeling better. Like, I've walked around the block. I'm glad I'm outside, fresh air, some time to myself. And this feels really good. I think I want to do more of this. And then so we've kind of motivated ourselves internally. And then the more motivated we feel, the easier it is to start to gain more momentum, right? Through
Mm-hmm.
just like step after step after step. So I kind of feel like they're really the kind of crossover. You know what I mean? Like they're very interwoven.
Mm-hmm.
I do see external motivation is different, and maybe this is a really good distinction to make. Is that I think external motivation is often relied on too heavily, and
Yeah.
it's I've got to have that amped up feeling from somewhere else, from something else to keep me going, right? Like, I've got to like post these motivational memes, and I've got to post these
Mm-hmm.
videos, and it's for me to try to stay elevated. And I think the danger there, the caution is it just doesn't work out that way. It doesn't sustain to I think we almost get like a little bit numb to it when
Mm-hmm.
we're like constantly exposing ourselves to motivational things. It's like in small
Well,
doses, I think it can work, but too much. And it's
yeah.
like, this is what I post on my page is these memes. So I guess it's what I do, but I haven't done anything for 3 weeks now. You know what I mean? But the internal motivation, that's a whole different story.
I also think that when I think of external motivators, um, often there are times you don't necessarily have control over. So it might be, you
Yeah.
know, how somebody responds or offers praise or validation to you.
Mm-hmm.
It might be seeking, um, you know, a, a certain podium or race result, if that's your thing. It might be seeking that weight loss challenge at work, and I'm gonna, win the thing. So it might have all of these other factors influencing it, which I'm not saying that external motivators are not powerful. They
Right.
certainly are.
Right.
I think a nice combination of external and internal, and then being able to distinguish between the two and which one is actually at play. Because to your point, the intrinsic motivation will definitely be longer lasting. And
Right.
that's, when people talk about what's your why, like what's
Mhm.
the deep why, when we talk about that, I think it probably could be defined under intrinsic motivation. Like, what are those things that speak to your values and your core beliefs and who you are as a person?
Mhm.
And if you don't hit any of those external, targets, or you don't get that validation, or you don't get on that podium, what else is keeping you going?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that I like your point, because I think with like extrinsic motivation, like it can be really fickle. I think like you could
Mm-hmm.
maybe like watch a certain video one day, and because of that day and what you have going on and your stressors or whatever, it doesn't do much for you. And you could watch it on a different day, the same video, and it could be really motivating, right? Like it's not like a constant thing. And it's not something that we can like, in the external way, it's not something that we can like bank on all the time. And so I think when people are constantly looking for that, like that becomes the issue, is because it's you never know when it's going to come, and you can't really manufacture it. It just kind of is what it is, and it just seems to come out of nowhere. But if we rely more on internal motivation and momentum, like those are things that we can control. We can manufacture
Mm-hmm.
those, we can create those, we can give ourselves evidence and like proof that we're capable of doing that. And then it's easier to do, and we have more confidence in ourselves to do that. So I don't think you, I think external motivation can be incredibly helpful used appropriately. I don't know that it's necessary. And I
Mm-hmm.
think internal motivation and momentum are necessary, and so it's it's tough when I think so many people put so much effort into being extrinsically
Yeah.
motivated,
Yeah.
and they neglect internal motivation, and they neglect any kind of momentum.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like the people that tell me that I want to be a runner. I just want to
Mhm.
be a runner. And I'm like, well, do you love running? No, I hate it. I
Yeah.
hate running. And I'm like, well, okay, why do you want to be a runner? And a lot of times it's that picture of what a runner looks
Hmm.
like. It's the runner's high that they read about. It's that running burns more calories. It's all of these other things. And I'm like, but those are all kind of external things that you are,
Right.
and intangibles that you're kind of hoping that
Right.
will then motivate you to be a runner and that you'll love. What about finding something you love and letting that be your motivator? It's a very powerful thing to
Hmm.
find movement that is joyful. And when I say movement, I really mean it does not have to be a sport. All
Right.
right. It could be yard work. It could be um it could be a LARPer. Do you guys have LARPers out there?
I haven't seen any. I'm
live
sure they're
action
around.
live live action role playing.
I'm
We have
sure
them in
they're
the
around.
park down here,
Do you?
and they like dress in sort of medieval maybe
Mm-hmm.
clothing, and like
Mm-hmm.
they have place swords and shields, and they just go through this whole like
Yeah.
role playing kind of thing. It's a thing.
Yeah.
But whenever I see them out in the parks, they're like this huge group of people. They're all in costume, and they are like full on like dancing around each other and like doing this role play combat kind of thing. And so anyway, this is a total tangent, but I'm just saying they're out there, they're outside
They're
being
out there.
active and obviously loving it. I didn't mean they're out there like as a judgment.
Right. Just out,
I'm
literally, physically outside.
outside.
Yeah.
They are outside and they
Yeah.
have found a joyful movement that they
Mm-hmm.
love.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my point, was
Mm-hmm.
to, find those things that you enjoy about the thing you want to do and about this lifestyle you want to have. And that could be finding, I mean, I talk with people all the time about finding enjoyment in food and cooking and the shopping and the recipes and all of these other things that people
Mm-hmm.
tend to think are like sucky. And then
Mm-hmm.
that's a negative feedback to motivation. If it
Mm-hmm.
sucks for you,
Right.
you're far less likely to do it. So whatever the change is that you're seeking, find a way to enjoy it
Right.
and to love what you do. And a lot of times you can remind yourself of that. Like Matt and I were talking last night that we're like, it would really suck to be a bike racer and to do the kinds of workouts that you have to do to race at that level and to
Mm-hmm.
hate riding your bicycle.
Yeah.
Like that just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And so we love riding our bikes and we can remind ourselves of that even when we don't really feel like the
Mm-hmm.
motivation isn't quite striking us to go out into the cold or to, go ride when we're tired. You can remind yourself, well, I actually do love this and I always feel better when I do it. And
Mm-hmm.
I could just do this and that will
Yeah.
make it more enjoyable for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important. I mean, if you hate everything you're doing, how long do you think you're going to do it?
Yeah, no kidding.
Like, come on.
Some
Like if
people
you,
do though. I mean, some
yeah,
people will stick with things just because they feel like they should or they ought to. And again, that's kind of those
yeah,
words that I sort of look for and listen for when people are talking to me. If you feel like you should or you have to, or there's like this compulsive kind of
hmm,
component, you have to examine that, and sometimes that is useful. For example, if you're training for a marathon or if you have a very specific goal and it's just a really crummy day and you're having a really hard time adhering to it, but you should or you ought to, because that could be powerful.
yeah,
But at the same time, you don't uh, I can't imagine a life where you are literally loathing the
yeah,
activities you're doing and because you think you need to do this to
right,
reach X goal.
right, right. You made a really good point that I want to get back to about like when people say like I want to be a runner, and
Mm,
it's because of that, like the visual of a runner. It's like these external things, right? And so it makes sense that people tend to seek and rely on external motivation. I think because the things they want to be motivated to do only like lie with the external, right?
mhm.
Like I want to look like this, I want to wear this size, whatever. Versus like, well, what about the internal? Like, okay, you want to look like that. Do you want to be the kind of person who like loves themselves looking like that? You know,
Yeah.
do you want to be the kind of person who like can do this sustainably? Do you want to be the kind of person that like experiences joy and happiness when these things are met? Because if you do, it can't all be external. Like we can't go external goals and priorities and have them work their way in and do like internal work, but we sure can do internal work and have it
Yeah.
bleed out. Like it only goes
Yes.
one way.
Yeah.
Right? Like the work doesn't get into like the heart and the head, but
Yeah.
it can go from there and really manifest in external physical ways. And so it makes sense that I think because a lot of people approach being healthy or losing weight or whatever with only external goals, right?
Mhm.
Like I don't care how I feel, I don't care how miserable I am, I don't care if I'm eating boiled chicken and broccoli all day long. I
And
just want to
brown
be
rice.
X.
Chicken,
Brown
broccoli,
rice.
brown rice.
Why
Where
is
did
that
that
the like
come
the
from?
trifecta of like, right?
I am fascinated by it. When people say that, I'm like, I mean, I like all of those foods, but I would get bored as hell eating them all the time.
Yeah, but if you have like boiled chicken, this is bland. Like just like boiled or steamed broccoli with no
Bland.
salt, because by God, if you have a little bit of a salt, you're going to retain all this water. Bland. And then rice on its
Brown
own,
rice,
bland.
plain. Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. It's flavorless and it's kind of a little bit soft and mushy. There's like
Right?
nothing exciting going on. Yeah. I'm totally with you on that like chicken broccoli rice thing.
Yeah, yeah. But,
Okay.
like if that's where everything is, all the focus is, then like that's where all our efforts, quote unquote, should lie. Like that's what we think, right? I just have to take care of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think this is piggybacking on, I don't know if it was last week or two, it was somewhere in one of the episodes, maybe a couple of them, talking about like why people don't last, why efforts and attempts don't last when people try to get healthier and lose weight, is because it's just completely backwards and set up wrong and like set up to be short-lived and unsustainable.
And we disregard the enjoyment factor
Right?
hugely in a lot of in physical activity, as I just, illustrated, but also food. I don't know how many people come to me with, I need to eat this way. Just this, the one of my clients put it perfectly, the mechanics of eating, right? The nutrients, the portion sizes, the whatever, these foods, the macros, instead of actually appreciating the enjoyment factor.
Right.
And I think, since we already established that motivation is more of an emotion or based on emotions, that enjoyment factor has to be there. That piece that makes it, that will definitely feed into your motivation to do
Oh
so.
yeah.
So if you're looking at this as like this punishment or this thing you have to do or you ought to do, and it sucks, I can imagine motivation's gonna won.
Yeah, it's like when people are like, "Food is just fuel." It's like, then why do you have taste buds, idiot? Like, what do you have those if it's just fuel? It's not. You're not pouring gasoline into the tank, okay? Like, it's a lot bigger than just fuel.
I worked with a strength coach in college, in one of my graduate rotations, who swore that he got zero satisfaction from food, from flavor, from texture. He actually would make a shake in the morning, just throw stuff in a blender. And I'm saying stuff as in there was a lot of stuff he would just put in that blender, not like your typical smoothie with fruit and whatever. He would make these drinkable meals that I just remember being like repulsed at thinking that this blended kind of food, but he swore he didn't get any satisfaction from it. So maybe
I believe he didn't get any
those
satisfaction from that.
from food in general. But maybe there are those people out there that really like that's how they operate. I don't think there's a lot of them in the world.
Yeah. I would
certainly
say
not me.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say there's probably very few of them.
Yeah, he's a rarity.
Yeah, so this is a total sidetrack, but so I used to work at the St. Al's psychiatric hospital there in Boise.
Yeah.
And we got a patient who had his he had a broken jaw, and his jaw was wired shut. So all he could do was drink. He couldn't chew anything, right? So he would go into the cafeteria and have them put in like a hamburger and French fries in the blender.
You can blend anything.
Just like his whole meal, like a sandwich and chip, like whatever his meal was, blend it all up. And he would sit there and drink like this hamburger and French fry shake. I just remember just being like, God, this is so disgusting.
Did you put ketchup and mustard in there? Pickles?
Maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but I remember him doing that kind of thing, like just making the meal that he wanted and then put it in the blender for me.
In a blender.
Oh, yeah.
Oh gosh, I don't.
Yeah.
I ate my fair share of pureed food out of. Dietitians, when we're doing clinical work, we are encouraged to taste those things, and in the clinical setting you need to do test trays and whatever, so that you're like marking the flavor, the temperature, the appeal, whatever. I've eaten my fair share of pureed foods, and they've come a long way. There are some that are fine. I do not think I could put a burger in a blender and slurp it up and enjoy it.
Right?
I am not motivated, Michael, to do that.
Because my guess is they had to add some liquid to it too. There's not enough liquid in a burger to make it drinkable, right?
Ketchup and mustard, baby.
Yeah. Or maybe like some milk or, oh God.
Okay, yeah. Well, so now that you all are gagging, let me just go back to something that Michael said earlier that I think is helpful in this motivation and momentum discussion. You said something about relying on the momentum. I also think you can remind yourself using the experience of
Oh,
momentum.
absolutely.
And even if, let's say you're feeling unmotivated or you were on this hot streak of whatever you were trying to do, and then all of a sudden life happens and interrupts it. Now the motivation is kind of gone, right? And the momentum is gone.
Mm-hmm.
So you're now kind of in this like stuck phase of I
Mm-hmm.
either have to quote restart or get back on track. How do I do that?
Mm-hmm.
I think that you can use that experience of momentum and reminding yourself that I've
Mm-hmm.
done this before. I know how to get back to that place.
Mm-hmm.
I can do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of talk your way through it.
Yeah.
And that was something I experienced going from, season to season or even race to race, because after I would have an Ironman or something, I would usually have a week or two of recovery and kind of easy, and the schedule was a lot looser. And it would be challenging for me to turn back on and like to be in it. That's what I always
Mm-hmm.
called it, when you're in it. And that
Mm-hmm.
means like I kind of had this tunnel vision, like this is what's in front of me. My training is priority over just about everything else at this
Mm-hmm.
time in my life. And so I'm like in the tunnel vision. I've got the blinders
Mm-hmm.
on. And that's the getting up at 4:50 in the morning to go swim. That
Mm-hmm.
is the hammering out a really hard workout and then knowing that I have to go to work and be like happy and engaged and dealing with like screaming kids. So that
Right.
but I could remind myself that okay, it's really difficult. I'm not highly motivated to do it at this time because I'm still kind of fatigued. I like the mental break. I like having more time with my spouse and my friends. I like sleeping in. There's all these incentives for me not to get back on track or not to get back in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know once I kind of get over that hump and once I take the action of just ticking the boxes and getting up and just going and doing it, that momentum will come back.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just give it a week. Like I
Mm-hmm.
would talk my way through it. Give it a week, give it 3 days even,
Mm-hmm.
give it some time and that momentum will come again. And it always did.
Yeah. Well, and I think you make a good point, and I don't know. So this is where I'm going off of what you said. I don't know if you'll agree with it or not, but I think that, so the thing about like we talk about external motivation, right? Like, and we talked about earlier, like it's a feeling, it's an emotion, and it can come to a like halt real quick. If something has momentum, like it takes effort to slow it down, right? Like think
Sure.
about like a train in the movies, right? It's like they slam the brakes, but like it's going to take a little bit because there's all this force and speed behind it. And so I think that sometimes when we have that momentum that's built up, if we stop like engaging in the behaviors that built that momentum, it still lasts for a while. Like if I've been going to the gym, 4 days a week for several months and I miss a week, I think it can be still pretty easy to pop right back into it
Yeah.
because there's still force going forward. Like I still identify as someone who's been doing this stuff. But if I take a month off, it's like, okay, this is hard to get back into because things have come to a halt.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, like you were saying, it can be sometimes that we fall back into that momentum pretty quickly. But I wonder if part of that is because there's still we still have some speed. We got to put, like if you once you get a bike going, using your bike illustration, right? Like pedaling becomes a lot easier because you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
apply as much force. But if you let
Yeah.
it slow down and slow down and slow down, maybe you're not stopped, but you're going to have to put a little bit more work into that momentum to get back up. But it's still not as hard as it was. And I think that's the beauty of really putting a lot of effort into building momentum, is that it carries you a little bit. Where motivation, especially external motivation, it can just be gone in a second. you
Mm-hmm.
know and I just think momentum, it takes time, it takes energy and effort to stop it. It does
Yeah.
carry you for a while, but
Yeah, and I think consistency comes into this conversation too when we're talking about momentum. kind of driving you forward and helping
Yeah.
you along,
Yeah.
just being consistent as is reasonable or as you can in that situation. And something else you mentioned when I had talked about the bike analogy earlier was that, you've got balance and you've got kind of a flow and a groove once you
Mm-hmm.
get going on a
Mm-hmm.
bicycle. Yeah, I think that riding a bike can be an analogy for life, for real.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
especially this conversation, when I think about the experience of, climbing up hills and feeling like, hey, I've got this, I'm rolling now, here we go.
Yeah.
It's more fun when
Mm-hmm.
you're rolling along, and when you've got a little bit of momentum and you can coast through some things if
Mm-hmm.
you want to. So again, it takes less effort to
Mm-hmm.
keep going
Mm-hmm.
once you've got a little momentum going. So
Yeah. Yeah. So the first time, I agree with that completely. The first time I think I ever mentioned this concept, like on social media, as Michael Gray Fitness, was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And I'm going to tell a story, and I think it illustrates internal or external motivation, internal motivation, and momentum really well. We'll see if it actually does. So, um,
pressure's on, buddy. Here we go.
okay, story time. So this is probably 3 years ago. So before we moved down here in Texas, we lived in Ontario, Oregon, and the house we were at, like where we put our dumpster up at the end of the driveway, it was kind of uphill back to the house. So it was, a little bit of a effort to get it back up. And one day my daughter Lila, so she was probably, I'm guessing 6 at that point. Came outside with me. She's like, Daddy, can I put the dumpster back? And I was like, try, go for it. Like that's fine. It's one of those bigger green ones. It's like whatever, 4.5 feet tall or something, and way
Yeah.
bigger than her, and uphill, and you got to bend it
Mm.
down and get everything right. So she was externally motivated. Like, this is cool. I want to do it. I want to be
Yeah.
like my dad, and I want to do a grown up thing.
Yeah.
And so she goes to drop it down and just loses it. Right. And it just falls down. And she's like a just awesome, peppy little kid. She's like, all right, let's get it back up and try again, and she does it 2 or 3 times. And I can see like the excitement, like on her face, like kind of like, go away. Like, okay, this is
Yeah.
stupid.
Yeah.
Like
I don't want to
that,
be like dad anymore.
right? So she's externally motivated. The thing she's attempting doesn't go like she thinks it should or wants it to. So
Mm-hmm.
external motivation's gone. Right. I think we see that with clients a lot. Like, it didn't happen as fast as I thought. So this
Yeah.
is stupid. And
I'm not
I don't
losing the
even,
weight.
right. Do I even want to do this
Why would I
anymore?
continue?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But because she's an awesome kid, she was like, all right, let me, try to figure this out. And so I gave her a few tips, I like wasn't going to do it for her. And she kind of got it balanced just right and took it slow and started getting it up the hill. And she got some momentum built with like just, okay, one step at a time. Let me take this slow. Let me hold it just where dad said to, and that kind of stuff, and take it easy, keep it down low because it's easier to push that way. And she starts to get some momentum built up the hill. And then what do I start seeing? I'm doing it. This is
Yeah.
awesome. This feels great. I didn't think I could do it a minute ago. And now I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing it. So, like you said, we start to take some deliberate choices, we start to do some work, right? And then we start to feel really proud of ourselves. And that's motivating. I think that's that internal motivation, because she's going like, whoa, I really didn't think I could do this, but I'm doing it
Mm-hmm.
now. And this is really exciting. And I feel really good. I'm proud of myself for doing this. So that's my story. I feel like that
Yeah.
kind of
I like
captures
it.
all three of those fairly
Yeah.
well.
And now
Yeah.
she takes out the trash regularly, huh?
No, I never.
You missed the teaching moment
I
there, huh?
did. I did. There's this really golden window with kids where they want to help you with everything. And Sophie's there right now. She'll be 4 in September, and she just wants to help with everything. Or even like if I'm taking the trash out to the garage, she's just like, "Can I come with you?" Like, yeah, you can come
Yeah.
out, walk in the garage with me while I throw this in the trash. And she just like wants to be a part of everything. And then that just boom goes away, and they don't want to do anything. Oh no, work kind of sucks. I figured that out. Like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I like that story. That's a good
Oh,
one. And kids, I think, do a good job of illustrating some of these in the most simple of terms,
They really do. I just feel like I have learned so much from having kids.
Mm-hmm.
There's just like, I mean, one, they tend to say things in ways that are just incredibly simplistic. Like I think we complicate stuff as adults a lot,
Oh,
and they just
totally.
cut through the crap and they'll say
Yeah.
something like in this super simplistic way that just like blows your mind. And you're like, "Whoa. Yeah, you're right. That's true." And
Mm-hmm.
it's just like maybe I realized that as a kid, but I certainly forgot it. And oh, yeah, I just learned like a truth about the world from my 5-year-old, you know? And she okay, another quick story. Sorry, it's story time today. Um Lila was probably 4, I'm guessing. And so Kat's family is down here in Houston, right? They always came down for a couple weeks at Christmas when Kathleen had off. She was a teacher. Um, and so they'd come down for I'd come down for 4 or 5 days and then go back to work and they'd stay longer. And so after one of those bouts, they come back and I was getting Lila in the tub and I remember exactly where we were. And I was like, man, babe, I missed you so much. She just goes, I didn't miss you. And I was like, oh, really?
Well,
You didn't
okay.
miss me at all? And she goes,
Yeah, just kidding. I don't know.
she goes, no, I can't miss you because you're in my heart. You're always with me. And I was just like,
Oh,
oh, well, that's pretty cool.
well, yeah.
Never thought
Okay.
about it in that way before. She's just like, you're always with me, Dad. So it's fine. It's
Oh
like,
my
oh,
gosh.
yeah, okay. All
How
right.
cute.
Lesson learned.
Yes. Oh, that's good stuff.
Yeah. But they do
Oh,
have a way of
kids.
teaching you stuff
Mm-hmm.
that you just kind of miss because they're not jaded. They don't have all the stress they can
Mm-hmm.
just say things so simplistically. But
Yeah.
anyway, enough about my
Cool.
kids.
So, yeah. No, I love hearing about your kids.
They're
They're
awesome.
great.
They
They're
are
great
the
kids.
best kids. Yeah.
Yeah. My brother, another tangent. I think
Oh
we're done
yeah.
talking about motivation and momentum, right?
Feels a little bit like it.
um, my brother and his wife had their baby over the weekend. So,
Congratulations.
yay. Thank
Yeah.
you. I'm an
That's super
auntie.
exciting.
The
Super
first
exciting.
time.
Because
Mm-hmm.
we recorded last Friday and you got
Uh-huh.
the text about like,
Yes,
oh, she's at the
things are
hospital or whatever.
happening.
Yeah,
Yeah,
things are happening.
she didn't deliver until 3 a.m. the next day. So it
Okay.
was, I think she was in labor over 20 hours and
Ugh,
whatever. And yeah,
that's rough.
there's some motivation and momentum in that story for let me tell you.
Hopefully some
But
momentum. Get things moving.
anyway, yeah. Anyway, no, I would say it was a lot more motivation. They had a hard time getting the labor to progress and
Yeah, it's tough.
keeping things rolling. But yeah, so I have a little nephew.
Yay. Is this your first?
Willie,
This is first. Are
yes,
you an aunt for the first time?
yes, I'm an
Ah,
auntie for the first time.
congratulations. That's
Will
fantastic.
William Randall.
Are you close
Yep,
to them? Like live close to them?
they're in Missoula, Montana. So
Okay.
not
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 super
close,
close.
close.
Yeah.
We're hoping to get over there maybe sometime this fall. Hopefully the whole pandemic times will
Yeah.
calm down and I told my brother even if we are camping out in your driveway and we do window visits with the little man, for a
Yeah.
couple days, it would be nice to just
For sure.
see everybody. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah,
That's exciting.
exciting.
Getting lots of pictures, I'm sure.
Yay.
Yeah. Cool.
So anything else on this topic?
Mm, I don't know that I have more to add. I guess for me, just to kind of sum it up, I would just say external motivation can be very powerful, but it can also be really fickle.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't internalize that and figure out how to kind of create your own internal motivation and how to build momentum through just repeated actions, one
Mm-hmm.
foot in front of the other, you're probably going to have a hard go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and things, I'd say there's a good chance things are never going to work out long term until you do that. I'm not going to say 100% because I don't know, but I know the clients that I've had that have been really successful have internalized this stuff, have realized
Mm-hmm.
like I have a lot of power within me to make significant change within myself. And I'm capable of getting to a place where I can rely on myself and I can count on me because you can't
Yeah.
count on the external stuff, all the time. You just can't. And I think the internal stuff is a lot more reliable.
Yeah. And the only thing I would add to that is that action begets motivation.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're feeling unmotivated and you can't find the right positive emotions and that spark to get you
Mm-hmm.
going, take the first step in that direction and
Mm-hmm.
the first 5 steps and just see where that leads you.
Yeah.
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 Good stuff.
Cool.
Cool.
All right. What's your mean and the mundane, miss?
So Matt and I went camping this weekend,
Mm-hmm.
and that's I would say a relatively mundane activity during the summertime.
Mm-hmm.
Not to diminish its enjoyment, but just to say like camping is
Pretty
not like
typical.
this, pretty like big exciting thing.
No one's like,
However,
whoa, you're going camping?
whoa, that's so cool.
I wish I could go camping. Yeah.
We, however, have not been camping together since 2009.
A
So,
few years.
yeah, it was kind of a wow type of activity for us because pro triathlon doesn't really lend itself to going camping because my entire schedule was geared around, okay, I have to ride 5 hours, or I have to have access to a pool or to swim, and I need to have someplace to run and whatever. It was just too much. So I made the camping trip happen. Matt wanted to go too, but I literally like packed the stuff and bought all the gear and basically said we're going. So we just loaded up and we kind of went exploring into this general area we knew we were going to go. We went up the middle fork of the Boise River and it was just gorgeous. We took our gravel bikes, went for some nice bike rides and played cribbage and just did this very ordinary summer activity. And we could not stop talking about it. Like we were talking about it the same way we were talking about our wedding day.
Really?
The next day we were just like, oh my gosh, this was so fun. Let's do it again. And blah, blah, blah. And do you remember this? And that. I mean, it's so silly that it was such a
That's awesome.
like blissful thing for us to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it just shows that, even those very simple activities. And I think, to be honest, it was the simplicity of it that actually made it so enjoyable because we were just, you didn't have cell coverage.
Mm-hmm.
We used our phones to take pictures and videos and that was it. Like everything else was just anti-tech and being present. So it was awesome. We loved it.
Very cool. And I have to just piggyback on that your guys' wedding is one of the most fun weddings I've ever been to. Yeah. It was a good time. Like coolers of beer on the end of the aisles and just sitting there having a PBR and
before the ceremony. This is Matt's claim to he had like 3 things that were absolute non-negotiables. And one of them was I want my guests to walk in and have a beer in hand before anything even starts.
Yep. So. That was awesome. It was outside. It was beautiful. And then I remember you walking down to Sweet Child of Mine, like this classical version of Sweet Child of Mine. Like we're sitting there
instrumental.
Like, is that Guns N' Roses?
That's Guns N' Roses.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That was actually our DJ Marty picked that one out because my dad and I didn't really have a song or anything. And that was something I really didn't feel super strongly about was what music we had. I had a mood and a feel I wanted to evoke, and set for our guests. But that was the suggestion of our DJ Marty. And that was a very popular one. I got a lot of comments on Guns N' Roses walking down the aisle.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was good. All right. So
what's
for
yours?
me, well, so if I'm friends with anyone on Facebook, you may have already seen this. It was a couple 2 days ago, I think. So I get up and I'm tired and I just don't want to be up yet. Right. But like, I can't sleep as late as I want because I have 2 little girls that are like, we're hungry, make us some food. Right. So like I get up and I'm just, not even close to awake. And I make a pot of coffee and I'm getting ready to figure out what I'm going to make for breakfast. And Sophie comes in. She's like, Dad, can I help you make breakfast? And she's helped me before sometimes, and I've always enjoyed it. But probably half the time when she asked me, I'm like, there's not really anything for you to do. Like in my head, I'm just like, I don't want to take the time to do this. It's going to take longer. It's going to be messier, blah, 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 blah. And I tell her, I'm just like, yeah, there's just not really anything to do right now. And so she, she just kind of turns and hangs her head a little bit and says this sad little, okay, and I'm like, dang it. So I'm like, wait, Soph, like, hold on, come here. And she turns around and gets like really wide eyed. And like, I go and like to pick her up, and I pick her up and she like puts her hands on my cheeks, and like she does this thing where she puts like her nose to my nose. So it's like her eyes are right here. And she has this like beautiful dark brown eyes, and she's just looking at me with this big smile. And she's like, I could help you make breakfast. And I'm just
so
like,
excited.
yeah, you are, because there's no way I can say no to this. And so then, it was messier than normal, like we got spilled eggs on the counter, and I picked shells out of the eggs, and, she dropped some stuff and made some messes. But it's just like, at the same time, I didn't care because we were having this awesome moment. Like, I was starting my day totally connecting with my kid, letting her know like time with you is valuable, and I feel like I've said this a lot, but it was a moment I almost missed, right? Like being a parent. And luckily, because I probably missed a lot of these, but luckily I didn't. And we just had like this awesome start to the day. And it didn't matter anymore how tired I was, how much I was in bed. I was like, this is all I want to be doing. This is the best thing. This is the best start to my day, So it was just sort of one of those kind of mundane, just getting up, making breakfast while I'm tired, turning my daughter down, initially, just sort of like a kind of thing that wound up being like this really awesome little moment for the two of us.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it was
I
fun.
love it. And I did comment on your
You did.
Facebook post,
And
and
you're like,
just
wow, Michael, you're a real jerk. I don't think you
no.
need to say that.
I think I said high five, Dad. But just a good reminder to all the parents that are listening that the kitchen is such a great place for kids to learn. And I know it gets messy, but it also is, as you can see with your daughter, it was probably one of the highlights of her day. And when we talk about feeding kiddos, that's a great place for kids to learn about food and flavors and textures and smells, and to get familiar with food. So for those of you who have experienced the picky eating or the, fear of new foods or any of that stuff, consider getting your kids in the kitchen. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that on a future episode.
Yeah, I think we should.
So,
and then I think just a lesson from the parent standpoint is like, it's
wear
probably
an apron.
Yes. Drop cloths. No.
Right.
But I think it's for the kid, it's really less about like that action. And what they're really saying is, I'd like to spend some time with you.
Yeah.
Because you're doing something. I want to be with you. So I will join you in what you're doing just to spend some time with you.
Cool.
And how many times do we, as parents, choose not to join our kids in what they're doing because we don't want to do it? So another little lesson from how kids are usually better people than adults.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, I don't care what it is. I'll just join you in it.
Yep.
Anyway, all right. I said
Good
I was
stuff.
done talking about my kids. I wasn't. But now
That's
I am.
okay. You can,
Now
yeah.
And scene. Yeah.
So, thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you.
Subscribe, leave us a review, send
Leave
us
a
an
comment.
email.
Yeah, email.
Middleish
share,
at
share,
Gmail.
please.
Yep. Yeah. Middleish@gmail.com is our email address. We love topic suggestions, questions, and we want to keep bringing you some good combo.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Keep it up.
All right.
Keep
Thanks,
listening.
everybody.